Welcome to Believe in Progress, the American Association for Cancer Research Foundation podcast. Join us and be inspired by the incredible stories of those who have faced cancer with strength and resilience, and the medical professionals who are working tirelessly to find new treatments and ultimately a cure. Believe in Progress isn't just about the science of cancer. It's about the human side of this disease. Together, we can make progress in the fight against cancer and bring hope to those who need it most. Welcome to a special episode of the Believe in Progress podcast, brought to you by the American Association for Cancer Research Foundation. I'm your host, Mitch Stoller, Chief Philanthropic Officer at the AACR. As we celebrate National Cancer Survivor Month this June, we dedicate these episodes to the remarkable individuals who have faced cancer with courage, resilience, and hope. Their stories not only inspire us, but also highlight the progress we've made in cancer research and survivorship. In today's Best of Survivor Stories episode, we'll revisit some of the most impactful conversations we've had with cancer survivors so far. These stories capture their journeys, the challenges they've overcome, and the triumphs they've achieved. Our goal is to honor their strength and to raise awareness about the critical issues that cancer survivors face. Join us as we listen to these powerful testimonies and celebrate the spirit of survivorship. And please do not forget to visit aacr.org to make a donation. When you were diagnosed and then you started treatment, how did you cope with that? I mean, did you use music to help you, through coping with the cancer treatment that you were given and just dealing with cancer and all the above?
Yeah, I think for me, and I did, music is always my healing, my special world. So I definitely relied on that, relied on my family. And, as far as the support, again, I'm going to go back to saying, I did go out and sing those games. And so every night I felt that I had, 20,000 people on my team and on my side. And what I didn't realize at the time, because you're so in your own world, was that there were people out there going through it too. Yeah. And there were friends and mothers and sisters and brothers and fathers, and they were out there and they were sharing this journey with me. So we kind of had each other, even though I didn't know them and didn't, recognize maybe all of the people that had shared or were sharing that experience. I think it just made such an impact on my life. And to this day, I have people that will come up to me and say, when you were going through this, you were such an inspiration, and I was going through this, or my friend was going through this. And, it just resonated even 20 years later. It just has that impact. So for me, that was a great life lesson about just giving somebody your hand and extending yourself.
So along those lines, and being a great inspiration to those people that you didn't even know were dealing with cancer, but were listening to you. We were talking earlier about you doing peer counseling still to the day and helping people. Could you talk a little bit about that and how that helps you, but more importantly, how it helps the people that you're talking to?
So just to jump backwards again a little bit, when I had been diagnosed with the Flyers, first person to call me was Eric Lindros. First person to get me a stick from another team, I got a Mario Lemieux hockey stick.
Wow.
And when I walked out one night, so everybody kind of rallied, and I thought, okay, that's just a little tiny moment. But I had received a phone call or an email from a boy I went to high school with, who's a man now, of course. And he had just simply given me the message that, hey, I went through this, I'm still here, and you can do this too. And just those words of saying, I've been there, you can do this, meant so much. It just changed my whole demeanor, my outlook. I think I was pretty positive to begin with, but a weight came off of me at that moment that I can't describe. Anyone that's been through that will understand. But that meant so much to me that there was no question, if I got past, the hurdles that I was going through, that I was going to do the same for somebody else. Because it could be just as simple as, hey, how are you? I'm thinking of you. Go Flyers. But in that moment, you're affecting someone in such a positive way. So I still peer counsel. People just write me, and there's no formal pathway to doing this, but if you want to find me, I'm not hard to find. And I've made lifelong friends over the years just from these conversations. And again, it was a gift to me that I felt I wanted to pass on to other people.
And the people that you're helping, these are people that are some still dealing with cancer, cancer diagnosis, and all different types of probably stories, I would imagine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and cancer does not discriminate, as you know.
I do know that.
But fortunately for me, most of the stories and most of the journeys that I've gone on with others have ended positively. And that's the word that I always say. There's no reason not to have hope ever. But it's just been really gratifying to me to know that just connecting with people means so much.
So music is such a big part of your life. Are you working on things right now within the music industry, or your own projects?
Well, I'm always working on new music. I just did Christmas music, and now kind of January, February is kind of a quiet time, and so you kind of rev up again in the spring and get going again. And the album that you had mentioned earlier, "Girl Keeps On," was completely about survivorship and about moving forward and moving ahead and believing in yourself and whatever it is that is the focus of your life. And it was, to this day, probably my best-selling album, and that's kind of cool.
Very cool.
Moment, that really tough moment, brought out such a great music and outlet for me. So I always have new things that I'm working on.
Were you formally trained, to like voice training, or?
I studied when I was young, and I studied classically. So I don't know which way I thought I was going, and I ended up at Temple with more of a popular music, jazz sort of focus, and writing and sort of theory. And I found the guitar. I was originally a piano player, but I found the guitar, and once I found that I could pick that instrument up and just go and play anywhere, anytime, I was like, oh, this is for me. So I ended up in like a songwriter rock sort of genre, because I just wanted to make music all the time. And
did somebody spot your talent early on, or to?
Well, my mom and dad.
Your best cheerleaders, I'm sure.
Yes, of course. Yeah, there were a lot of those great moments. I think the first biggest moment happened here in Philadelphia at the Academy of Music, and they were honoring just some great Philadelphia legends like Patti LaBelle and Teddy Pendergrass and
the Philadelphia Sound.
Yeah, the
right?
Philadelphia Sound.
Yeah.
And I was along for the ride. My best friend's dad was a member of this group, the Dovells, who wrote and sang the Bristol Stomp, and we're from this area. And growing up, I was like, oh my gosh, one day, And so they had invited me to come along to this concert, and I'm sitting in the audience, and they're getting the finale together, where they would have everybody on stage, and they were all going to sing Philadelphia Freedom. Except nobody knew the words but me. Said, I know it.
All right.
And I actually got to go up on stage and lead all these legends, which was like mind-blowing, in this song. And so that was like the first moment that I was like, wow, something big might happen. Something more might happen here. And, from that moment, I just kept moving forward, and that's how I look at it to this day. I love getting these cool opportunities and all the things that I get to do, but the idea is just perseverance, which is just keep going. And that's how I live all of my life. Just keep going, and it doesn't mean every step is a huge stride.
Great message for everybody to persevere, right?
Yep, just keep moving forward. And I think there are things in my career that I would have liked to have achieved already, or that I might never achieve, but I think I'm the winner because I'm still here.
This is real, right? Like, I have my wife and I live in Cape Elizabeth, Maine. We have 2 teenage daughters, and I was diagnosed at age 41 in 2018. They were 12 and 10. And now I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I'm looking at colleges with my senior in high school, and that doesn't happen without cancer research.
Sarah, Sage, and Elise, that's your support system,
Elsie,
right?
Yeah, my
Elsie,
wife,
sorry.
Sarah, Sage is 17 and Elsie is 15.
And who's the singer? Who's the singer that does the beautiful, has the beautiful voice?
The singer is my 17-year-old Sage. She does all the national anthems. I think she's done it for like 6 of the sports teams here at our town. So proud of her.
Amazing. How important is that support system? You know, how important is that? I mean, you know, these folks have been by you through thick and thin, right?
Absolutely. I'm the luckiest person in the world. It's weird, right? You get life-threatening metastatic cancer at age 41, but I do consider myself the luckiest person because I have an amazing support system. I have an amazing family. We're going to get into Man Up to Cancer, and we're going to talk about that. A lot of the men in our community don't have that support system. They don't have that wife who's going to stick with you through thick and thin. They don't have those kids at their side, and also the extended family and community. So it means everything to me. And then just circling on your initial question, 2018, I was just getting more tired and tired. Fatigue was my only symptom. And by the time I went in to actually get my blood work done, I was severely anemic and I had about a 10 centimeter tumor in my large intestine, in my colon. And that changed my life in all the ways, right? So the past 5 years has been dealing with that and dealing with that cancer and living with it, learning how to live with it. So at the time, it was a life. I always use the phrase life asteroid. Like you're just going along in life. You're doing your thing. I was really in the prime of my life. And then I got a stage 4 diagnosis and all of a sudden everything changed.
No family history or like any genetic links at all or?
Yep. So I have Lynch syndrome. I did not know about Lynch syndrome until I got diagnosed. So Lynch syndrome just basically is it's a genetic mutation. So we have these genes in our body that repair cells when they do crazy things and replicate and turn into cancers. And for people with Lynch syndrome, one or more of those genes doesn't operate correctly. So it's basically like your spell check system in your body doesn't work. So I found out that later, and then there are some, there's colorectal cancer in my family, but usually it would happen like in the 60s or 70s, like people who were older. So there was no early onset, what we call early onset or young onset colorectal cancer, CRC. There wasn't anyone in my family who had that. So, I was just going to do the regular screening when I got to 50. Now it's 45 for reasons we might get into. But there was colorectal cancer in my family, but it was at an older age. So I definitely didn't have any reason to have it on my radar.
So early on, it was some pretty tough times for you. I mean, you talked a little bit in the book about being depressed and just really kind of down in the dumps. And that's not the guy I know or the guy I've met. But if you feel comfortable, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, those tough times.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the core of the message. That's the core of my message with Man Up to Cancer. And the book is just being honest about what I've gone through emotionally and what a lot of guys go through with the emotional burden of cancer and the mental health piece of it, because we need more guys to just be role models in that area and just say like, yeah, I struggled. So for me personally, after diagnosis and learning I was stage 4 and going into surgeries and chemo and everything else, I went into a real mental health tailspin, anxiety, depression, isolation. In the summer and fall and into the winter of 2018, you wouldn't recognize me, right? And you alluded to that because I'm a outgoing person. I like to think I have a pretty good mindset. But man, I was at rock bottom with my mental health to the point where I honestly didn't have much will to live for myself. And I think the reason that I did live and didn't just walk into the woods and disappear was because of my family. And it was that bad. I had thoughts of feeling like I have failed. I've failed my family. I'm ashamed. I'm going to die. I'm going to leave them alone and my little kids. And I was crushed. And so, like you said at the outset, I've gone through all this physical stuff, all these surgeries, all this chemo, and that is easy compared to the emotional burden of feeling like you're going to pass away and not be there for your family.
That's tough stuff.
And
that's tough.
It was a really dark place.
Yeah. You talk about the Shawshank Redemption, and it's in the book, and I happen to love that movie as well. And I don't know if this relates, but this Get Busy Living, was that like Was that quote the turning point here?
Yeah. I mean, as I say in the book, I'll condense it real quick, but I was so depressed and to the point where I just couldn't function. And I had this really important conversation with my wife right around Christmas 2018, where I said, I'm so terrified that, I just can't get over this idea that I'm going to die and my kids are going to remember me as sick. And she looks at me, and this was the moment I'll always remember. And she looked at me, she said, Trevor, I'm not going to I'm not worried they're going to remember you as sick. I'm worried they're going to remember you as sad. And that was the moment that, again, I tell this all the time. I couldn't snap my fingers and say, I'm better now. I'm out of my mental health pit. Like I see now that I need to be better. But it was the moment where I looked at her and I said, you know what? You're right. Because I'm not a sad person. Like that's not who I am. And it's not how I want to be remembered. So it doesn't matter if I live another year or another 40. I'm going to do everything I can to live with joy and purpose. And it's not going to happen overnight, but I'm going to do something tomorrow, today, tomorrow, the next day, every day to get back to that, to be that person that I want to be, to be the husband and the dad I want to be. And that was, like you said, that was the get busy living moment where I knew that, and I knew that I needed help. And that's a huge barrier for a lot of guys, is to get to that point to say, I can't do this on my own. Like I'm at that place to say like, hey, I'm in a hole and I need some hands.
And so you've been diagnosed, you're at Dana-Farber. What happens next?
So there's a long story to it, but no good news. I'm failing therapies. They're throwing the kitchen sink at me. I'm having tons of side effects. I'm landing in the hospital. I'm doing tons of blood transfusions, platelet transfusions. And the piece of good news, and this goes back to being a twin sister, she typed an exact 100% HLA match for a bone marrow transplant. And that was in about February of 1990. And they worked like hell to get me into remission. And on May 17th, I checked into Dana-Farber and they put me through blasting chemotherapy. That was the protocol. And twice daily for 20 minutes, full body irradiation, which was tough stuff, to get my immune system down to 0 so that my sister's bone marrow could regrow in me. And listen, when you sign the paperwork, they say, listen, you're taking someone else's blood or an organ. It could kill you right away. It could kill you quickly over time. Or our prayer and hope is that it will work. Well, it started to grow in me and my immune system is growing back. And then the intent of her immune system was to kill off the malignancy. Well, they were watching me and taking blood counts like crazy, and it started to work. And I went on to a very early clinical trial, arm 1, patient 4 of interleukin 2. So I was an experimental guy, but that worked. It strengthened my natural killer cells. And I wore a little belt and I changed the cartridge every Tuesday. I called it my oil change with my nurses. And I started to, build that immune system back up. And pretty much after they see things are working, you start to go on surveillance. And that's when you go from diagnosis, stunned, deer in the headlights, to the treatment. And then you move forward to survivorship. And putting Humpty Dumpty back together again is really tough. And I was 24 and a half years old. So not only did I think I was going to die, I had to go build the bricks again and build my confidence and my physical ability and my financial ability to work a full day. And I did that by getting back in shape on the basketball court, finding my happy place. So I moved to California, all the way across the country. So that's part of story one. But that's a miracle that my twin sister was able to give me that. Now, Mitch, not everybody has this, but I have my bag of life. This is the actual bone marrow bag that my sister's bone marrow was purple at the time. They infused in me. And why I took it, I have no idea. But this bag saved my life.
Wow. So it was a bone marrow transplant?
Yeah, now they call it a stem cell transplant.
Yes.
But back then they called it a bone marrow transplant. And they extracted my sister's bone marrow, cleaned it up a bit, removed some things, and then injected into me in an infusion.
Remarkable. When we talked many months ago, we started talking, both of us, about our love for basketball, because I played basketball and I played basketball in college as well, and you really felt a synergy with you. My brother is a cancer survivor, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma B cell, so it's different, obviously, and he was very fortunate also because of cancer research, because they, Rituxan was discovered and sure enough, took care of him and cured him, and he's still out there, living a good life. So that we are really, really pleased about.
Well, I'm one of the longest living bone marrow transplant survivors that Dana-Farber can remember because they lose track of you. After you stop doing, 5 years and your gallium scans and your blood tests, and they want to do a bone marrow aspirate biopsy, you kind of lose track unless you decide to keep in touch. And so this is now, 34 years ago.
Yeah.
And I keep in touch with my docs, and but most people don't. They go on with their lives, which is the point of the whole thing. And so I wake up every day from that and just say that I am really blessed, very grateful, and very lucky from that episode there.
Howard, why California? Was it Silicon Valley? Is that what drove you there? When you meet people that are battling cancer, families that are battling cancer, what do you, obviously it's different for different people, but what kind of message do you send them? Do you try to motivate, or what's your message?
So the first key message, and I actually say this in the cancer chapters in my book, is that this is your time to be selfish and learn to accept help. You have to let others help you. Okay. Whether it's the meal, the calendar of meals from the soccer team, moms and dads, whether it's getting cheerleader, whether it's a GoFundMe, let people help you in your time of need. And the person who is in the time of need the most is your caregiver. Okay, my caregiver parents and my caregiver wife are angels on earth, just like our nurses and our infusion nurses, what they do every day. My wife had to basically take over running the household, raising our daughter, and making sure and keeping track of medical bills, appointments, when to take the medicines. And so that's the first piece of advice that I give anyone that gets diagnosed is it's your time to be selfish, learn to accept help. And I've done that. The second piece is that you need to stay hydrated, you need to stay active, and you need to get enough sleep. And sleeping is healing. And that's all about taking care of yourself when you're in the midst of this. And sometimes it's hard to do. And if you cannot get out of bed that day, don't. But when you can get out of bed, you could actually just go up and down the stairs. You got to get your blood moving. The worst thing to do is to be sedentary.
Right.
And the other thing is the next thing is get a mentor. Okay. Get a buddy, get a mentor. There's organizations like Immerman Angels and the Alliance that do this. Get someone here that you can talk to. Okay. Or get professional help. Talk to a nurse navigator, talk to a social worker, talk to another cancer patient. You don't have to keep that all bottled up. And I have to tell you, men, and Trevor Maxwell was on the cover of Cancer Today magazine. He started it for men. Men tend to isolate, and men don't want to share their feelings, and men are macho. You don't have to be macho. Cancer is not something that you actually have to just conquer yourself. And so those are the three basic things that I start with when someone actually gets a diagnosis.
Research is really, really important. You talked a little bit about team sport, which I kind of love. I haven't really heard that phrase before, but tell our audience why, in your mind, this team sport or funding cancer research is really critical for future advances.
Well, first of all, it's vital. All right, we can't make advances in this. This costs money, and this is not just a simple thing that you flip over. We do a fundraiser and then it's done. This is cancer is something that we're going to have in our lifetimes, and hopefully we eradicate it in future lifetimes. Colon cancer is on the rise in young people. This isn't your granddaddy's disease anymore. Young people are getting colon cancer, and we need to fix that. And so we've had some great breakthroughs, and immunotherapy is one of them. It is starting to break that down. People are healing. They are living longer with cancer. I think there's the stat is 16 million living, and then it's going to be about 25 million people living with cancer, or maybe it's 18 million. But we we are the why, right? So what you do every day by asking people to support cancer research is to actually take Howard Brown and allow him to live one more second, one more day, one more week, one more month, and one more year, living his life with his family. And that's why you want to donate, because in order to get there and make these advances, we have to do that. And this is what the organization, that's the core foundation of what you do, Mitch, at AACR.
Love the message.
Raise those vital funds to move us forward.
Love that message. How do you stay in shape? You still playing basketball, or what are you're walking and running? What are you doing?
So I'm active. I like to bike and mountain bike a little, and I like to hike, but I'm still playing ball at age 57.
All
I'm
right.
not the same guy. I've slowed it up, but I've developed a 3-pointer, even with stage 3 peripheral neuropathy. I can knock down a 3. I'm a point guard on the court, and I played last night. I didn't play as well, but on Monday I played as well. I got called at the last second. I couldn't miss. So I'm just so grateful to be on the court, because that is the happy place. And you know this,
I
Mitch.
know.
That's the stress-free zone.
Yes.
Okay. You can talk trash. Yeah. I don't have a worry on the court at all, except for the fact that, did the guy make a back pick, or did we score? Did we win? And it's all in fun and games. And I love it. And everyone needs to find their happy place, right? It could be yoga, meditation, cooking. I don't care. Go find it. Go there often. And I like to get on the court at least 2 to 3 times a week.
I've also found my people, so to speak. I think my husband, and he is the most amazing partner through all of this. And I appreciate him so much for everything that we've been through together, the positive stuff and, all the difficult stuff. So I think there's just a fullness to my life that maybe wouldn't have been there otherwise.
Probably really important to have a caregiver like that, like Noah. That's so impactful for you. But it's probably also taught you, as you talked a little bit about your mom and dad, how you are a caregiver now as well, right?
Yeah, and it's, being a caregiver is a whole other part of cancer treatment, right? And I think even before my parents got sick, I recognized that was a piece of it that was hard in ways that was totally different from what it was hard for me, right? Because I can always do something. I can go to the treatments. I can actively fight the cancer. I can do all of these things. And a caretaker has to kind of sit by and sit in this really uncomfortable place with you. And there's not a lot they can do. And so you appreciate those people, it's really a special person that can sit with you in those really uncomfortable places. And as a caregiver for my parents, even knowing that going into it, it's been really hard that I can't fix it, right? I can't fix what my mom is going through. I couldn't fix what was happening to my dad. And I just had to kind of sit with them in those moments. And that's hard.
Yeah, I bet. So, law school, Temple University brought you to Philadelphia, which is probably,
Yep.
one of the greatest things that's happened to the AACR, having you move to Philadelphia. Well, why Temple? Why Philly? Just kind of curious, what was your motivation for that?
So I came to Temple because I got a full scholarship.
Oh, that's a good reason.
Yes, which was a very, very good reason. But I stayed in Philly because I love the city. So I moved to Philly, and then a year later, my husband followed me out to Philly. And it's just one of our favorite places in the whole world. We still miss Philly every day. We lived in South Philly. We loved our little neighborhood. We loved that we knew the people that worked at the grocery store. And, I had a little family at my nail salon, and all the restaurants knew our dogs, and people would come out and bring them out dog bones. It's just.
Yeah. Is Noah from Michigan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
He grew up. Well, he's my best friend's older brother, Mitch. So I've known
I didn't know that
Noah
either.
since I was. Yes.
Okay.
So I have known Noah since I was 14 years old.
Oh, wow.
And actually, it's an amazing story. His sister is my best friend. Her name is also Sarah. And we've been friends since we were in middle school. And one of the reasons that we came back to Michigan is that Sarah's husband had bladder cancer.
Oh, boy.
He was 37 years old, stage 4 bladder cancer. And unfortunately, right as the pandemic was happening, we lost John.
I'm very sorry to hear that.
Thank you. They were married for, 2 years. And, but it was just this, you think about the universe and fate and all of those things to bring the four of us together, right? People that had known each other their whole lives and had this amazing family connection, kind of walking this weird path on cancer together.
Yeah.
I was grateful that I could be there for Sarah and John, and that, we could support the four of us, each other.
Yeah.
Because we were living through these kind of common experiences.
I can't pinpoint like the moment we met and how you got involved with AACR. It might have been through one of our staff members, might have been Danielle actually. But could you tell us and talk a little bit about why you decided to volunteer for AACR, why you decided to raise money for AACR, and then part two of that would be, in your mind, the importance of cancer research and the kind of work that we do.
So I think there were two reasons that I have worked with AACR and stayed involved in AACR. I mean, and the original reason I wanted to work with you guys is because of your mission, right? You support cancer research. That's the stuff that's going to really have an impact on patients.
Hi, everyone. This is Mitch Stoller, Chief Philanthropic Officer at the AACR and the host of Believe in Progress. I hope you're enjoying today's episode. I wanted to take a quick moment to remind you that your support is vital in our fight against cancer. As we always say at the AACR, cancer research saves lives, but we cannot do that without the generous support of people like you. If you're moved by the stories and insights shared in our podcast, please consider making a donation to AACR by visiting aacr.org. Your contributions help fund essential research and provide support to those affected by cancer. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe to the Believe in Progress podcast. By subscribing and sharing with your friends and family, you help us reach more people with these important conversations. Thank you for your support. Now let's get back to the episode. So, Doug, I think it'd really be great for the audience to learn a little bit about your cancer journey. So you're at Brown University, you're playing soccer, and kind of fill in from here what happened.
Yeah, so I was 19 years old. I was home in Maryland, staying with my parents for the summer, getting ready to go back for my sophomore year. And I was really passionate about soccer. I was training all summer. I had not gotten to play as much as I would like my freshman year. And so I spent all summer sort of trying to get back in shape and be ready for preseason in August. And I was in the best shape of my life and feeling like a typical 19-year-old invincible and sort of looking to the future. And one night I went for a run with my older brother, who happened to be in town and had, in my description, had gotten out of shape. And so we went for a little run, and we were goading each other a little bit. And when we got back, I was wheezing. And I had had asthma as a child, but I hadn't had an episode in a long, long time. And after about an hour or two, my parents said, you should go to the emergency room. We should go get it checked out. And I thought, I'm fine. I'll be totally fine. And they really encouraged me. And so we went to the emergency room. It was late on a weeknight. And the physician there said, you're totally fine. It was a hot August, humid night. And he said, you probably got some allergen or something that you sort of breathed in as you were running, and you'll be good to go in the morning. And as we were leaving the hospital, he said, while you're here, let's just do a chest x-ray. And he did the x-ray, and he said, it looks great. Next morning, I woke up. I was coaching soccer camp for little kids. I went to camp. I felt fine. And when I came home, there was a voicemail on our answering machine at my parents' house, and it was our family physician who had been in the hospital that day and had looked at my x-ray. Apparently, they notified him that I had been in. He looked at the x-ray, and he said, you need to have a CT scan immediately. And at the time, I didn't know this, but what he saw was a shadow behind my heart on the x-ray, and he thought it could have been a heart condition. Mm-hmm. And so I had that CT scan, and that allowed them to discover a tumor that was growing attached to my rib cage. And that's what sort of started the journey, although at that time, we were told that it was probably benign because it actually was not the reason I was wheezing. It had nothing to do with the reason I went to the hospital and may have been there for a long time. And so they said, this is probably nothing. Don't worry about it. And that's how it started. Fortunate aspect for me was that pretty quickly or early on, I realized that I was going to survive, right? It wasn't And so when I moved past that, then it was like, well, I want my normal quality of life.
Yeah.
How quickly can I get back to that? And fortunately, I had an amazing coach, and he was super supportive, but he was also someone who encouraged me to do things that I would not have done otherwise. So as an example, he basically forced me to come to practice every day, even though I couldn't play. And I would sit on the side and watch. And it was annoying at first, but it felt good to be around everybody. Sure. And so he then made me set goals and made me jog when I could, and then run when I could, and then scrimmage when I could, and then play when I could. And he really helped me get back to some sense of normalcy, even though it was, as we always say, the new normal.
Yeah. When did the second cancer come about then? Was that shortly thereafter, or?
Yeah. So the first was in August of 96, and the second was in March of 97.
Okay.
I had gone home for a little spring break. And while I was home, I went in to see a physician at Johns Hopkins, and she said, "Hey, we got to do a little biopsy on this one spot on your skin that I noticed." And I literally had the biopsy, didn't think anything of it. And then I went back to school, and I was getting ready to go to practice one afternoon, and she called to share the news. And again, I remember thinking, gosh, I don't know anything about melanoma.
Right.
Here I'd learned
Right.
everything I could about this other type, and now I'm starting over. And so it was just sort of almost a deja vu of doing it all again.
So for folks out there that are dealing with these kind of things, what's your advice to people that are getting diagnosed and unfortunately maybe don't have the resources that you had, and your family gave you? Any thoughts of what people should be doing?
Yeah. I mean, I think cancer in some ways is the great equalizer, right? Because it doesn't matter who you are or how educated or how much money you have, or as soon as you hear those words, you immediately don't know what to do.
Right.
And it's a feeling that is tough, especially for people who like to be in control.
Right.
And who like to sort of be able to make decisions. But you got to make a lot of decisions with imperfect information. My advice is to just, one, know that you're not alone. There's a lot of people who have either been down this path or who are going down this path currently. Number two is, you have to be able to stay in control of some aspects of your life. And whether that's your diet or your nutrition or your exercise or being around family or some kind of routine, there's a lot of things with cancer that you can't control. But to the extent that you can control a few aspects of your life, I think psychologically that makes a big difference. And then really got to find your support group, right? Your friends, your family, your classmates, your teammates, your colleagues, whoever it is in your life, the one or two or three key people who are going to support you and help you, because it's human nature, I think, is that we don't like to ask for help.
Right.
And nobody likes to be in that position of asking for help. And yet you need help and you need people to be able to talk to and people that are going to help you along the journey. So it can be super overwhelming, and yet it's an experience that millions of people have had.
Living a public battle with cancer taught me, honestly, John, chill out. You need people to prop you up right now. You need their assistance. Take it. And boy, did I get it. I got, and I wouldn't have gotten through as easily as I did. And I do say as easily as I did because it was 12 weeks of 12 treatments over 24 weeks, every other week. And it would start on Wednesday afternoon after my show. And that would be my steroids, my anti-nausea, and then my oxyplatin, which is still haunting me today. The side effects from that hopefully is going to go away. And then before I would leave, they'd hook me to my port, and I would have the mobile pump that would pump me with the 5-FU poison through Friday at lunchtime when I would get disconnected. And it got to be murder as it went along. By treatment 8, I was cruising till like 7.
Right.
And then around treatment 8,
it was getting to you.
Oh yeah. And by I got to the last 4, I had told my wife, under no circumstances, and I wrote it down, under no circumstances am I to say I need a break. Because my great doctors, and all of them, from Jack Colazzo, who found my cancer, to Henry Schoon Young, who took away my cancer, to the Sprandios. And Dr. Sprandio, John Sprandio Jr. is spectacular, who helped me come through this with my treatments. I had sworn, he goes, if you don't take a break, if you can get through this, the success rate is amazing.
Okay.
And I told my wife, under no circumstances am I quitting or taking a break.
You were also promoting this publicly too.
Oh,
Remember
yes.
social media?
Oh, yes.
Was it, I forgot, blocks or what?
What I did is my daughter needed something as much as I did to just realize we're going to get through this.
Yes.
She is thankfully beautiful and smart like her mother, but she is very much her father's child. And I need goals and objectives and check boxes and see progress. So my wife brought home a thing of 12 like plain blocks.
Right.
And my daughter and I painted them and then numbered them.
Right.
And I created a tower of 12.
Right.
And every time I had a treatment day, from the very beginning, I had a block tower designed as 12. And then the next time I would have a treatment, it would be a block tower of 11, block tower.
It was great.
And people saw it.
Yep.
People responded to it. And people built me up along the way. Like, look,
Yeah.
you're halfway home.
Yeah.
You're everything. And
Did it help you? Did this?
It did. It did. It's social media doesn't tend to be the warmest, fuzziest place
Right.
at times. But boy, did it help. Like it really did. And it was something whereby, like when I was diagnosed with cancer, decided to do a public message. So that way I could say it and not have to say it 50 times.
Right.
And so there are some benefits to it with social media. But with my daughter and I, with our blocks, and then every time it'd be throwing one away. And when I threw that last one away, I broke down.
I'm sure you did.
It was just like, I can't believe.
How about Liv? Did she
Well, we
break
just went-
down too?
No,
No?
she's tough as nails.
Yeah.
She may have broken down with her mom.
Okay.
She may have broken down.
But that was helpful for your family as well.
I think it was.
Yeah.
I think it was. I don't know how they were spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a blessed man because they were spectacular. And by the way, too, when I say family, I have a large extended family here in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And they were fantastic and took care of me. And my friends that in the last few years that I've gotten much closer to again, that I had moved away from, but I'd stayed in touch with, and I would see them maybe once or twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
And now to be able to have them be a few miles away. One of my best friends growing up, Joe, was literally like 3 miles away. Another friend of mine, Pam, who was from here, and her family is friends with, like, a lifetime of friendships was reopened to me when I returned home. Little did I know how much I would be leaning on them in just a couple years.
That's fantastic. So 3.5 years ago, it was COVID, right?
Sure.
And I think it was December, sometime in mid-December, you accepted the job. I
Right.
don't think you started until January.
I didn't start
right?
January 4th.
And our good friends Dina and Jamie scheduled a call, and it was the first opportunity for me to meet John Kincaid. And I knew immediately just listening to the man talk, and we were just having a conversation. What a great ambassador John would be for the American Association for Cancer Research, for AACR. And we decided then to become the charity partner of the John Kincaid Show. And 3.5 years later, going on 4 years, we proudly still are. So John, talk to our audience about the 97.5 AACR Kincaid relationship.
Well, one of the things I did was I did my homework on you and your organization.
I'm sure you
beforehand. And one of the things that I always look for with a charity is a stewardship of funds. And I looked at the AACR, and I looked at the fine work that is done, and I look at the efficient use of funds. Because to me, I'm not throwing rocks, but there are charities out there where a lot of money is spent on crystal chandeliers and gorgeous offices. Not that your office isn't beautiful, Mitch, with the Final Four, Papa shot on the back of your door there. But I think they spend the money sometimes for show.
Mm-hmm.
The AACR is not about show. The AACR is about results. And what I also loved was the fact that it's about young minds. It's about innovation. It's about what's coming, not necessarily what already has happened. And to me, that inspires me. I teach college now, one course a year. I don't call myself a professor. I just tell them, call me John. But I love the shaping of young minds, the interaction with young people.
Me too.
And well, it's obvious. That's why you're here.
Mm-hmm.
Because the AACR is about, honestly, I think very much so, what cancer is going to be like 5, 10, 15 years from now, and hopefully obliterated down the line. And I love that mission. I love a mission that's about not spackling the wall. It's figuring out how to fix the problem that's behind the wall,
right,
and to be able to make the big move.
With all this going on, though, how did you maintain your attitude? I mean, you strike me as a very upbeat, positive person, and this is a lot being thrown on you at 23-year-old, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about your attitude, just dealing with all this stuff.
It's hard to explain. I've always been a pretty outgoing individual. I feel like I learned a lot of who I am from playing sports growing up.
What sports, by the way?
Softball. I mean, I dabbled in a lot. I like a little bit of field hockey, a little bit of basketball, but I stayed consistent with softball. I love baseball. And
what position, by the way?
First base and catcher.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And I feel like the grittiness of the game kind of taught me to just hustle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense.
I learned a lot of that from my dad. My parents were my coach growing up. So they kind of instilled that mindset. And I also feel like maybe I just had it. My mom is the same way. I feel like I'm a lot like my mom in a lot of ways. So I think I've just been lucky enough to have them kind of instill that mindset in me. And then it kind of just stayed. And I almost felt like I was taking this cancer battle like a game of softball and treating it like a sport.
Like competition almost, right?
Right. And so, of course we like challenges, and I was up against the biggest one I'd ever be in my life. And, I was like, it doesn't get any harder than stage 4 cancer. I already was given 3 months to live. I really have nothing else to lose because I'm actively losing, days. So I was like, how would this help? How can I get a little more motivated? And this does not work for everybody. And I don't recommend it to people when they ask me, how did you stay focused and positive? And I would Google everything about my diagnosis, obsessively till 4 a.m. I would Google the prognosis. I would Google how rare it is. It's extremely rare. It's 0.4% rare, just the exact criteria of the cancer. And my prognosis was non-existent. I tried to find stories of people that have survived this very specific case I was dealing with, and I don't think I found one. And that weirdly motivated me because, I don't know, I wasn't afraid to die. And I know that sounds heavy, but cancer's heavy. And it was this weird motivation that I was feeling by obsessing over how crazy it was that I had something like this. It was so unbelievable, where it was almost empowering. And of course, it was not always positive. I'm relatively a positive person. I usually would handle serious situations with humor. I would laugh it off. That's just how my family is. We joke about things. So I kind of just tried to stay consistent with that being that way helped me throughout the battle. But there were definitely dark days. And I think the importance because of course you hear, toxic positivity within, the cancer community sometimes. And I do believe that when, you can't try to push too much positivity, it's not about remaining positive all the time. I think it's about remaining hopeful all the time, because it's not realistic to be positive all of the time. There's very dark days. There's days where you're questioning, the treatment that you're doing, if you're going to the right hospital, if you're seeing the right doctors, if the treatment's even working. There's extremely dark days. And, I remember this one night, my mom was by my bedside. She was trying to get me to swallow the many pills I was on at the time, and I couldn't because I had very bad thrush from the chemo. And I just remember breaking down, and I said, Mom, I don't want to live anymore. And I meant it at the time, and it was probably my darkest time during treatment. And that's the worst thing you can ever say to your mom.
Right.
And I feel bad that, she's strong enough to have gotten through, her battle with everything. And, it was just a very dark time, but I didn't stay in that dark time. I remained hopeful. I reminded myself that I'm in the best care possible. I have to trust my doctors. I have to trust that this is working. And the battle itself, like going through something like cancer, is so hard. I didn't want to make it harder by not trying to enjoy my days.
Right.
I knew I was limited, and I didn't need to do anything miraculous. People were like, what are you going to do if you find out today's your last day? I'm going to go skydiving. No, I just wanted to be happy and present with my loved ones. So I was trying to live my days with quality time, quality, presence around me. And I think that allows us to not have so much pressure on getting so many things done in a day in our lives, because we know that life is short. It's just about enjoying those simple days.
Yes.
Enjoying the time that we have. And so I just tried to do that.
Yeah.
I was like, well, if I'm given 3 months, that's not a lot of time with my family.
Right.
I'm not going to make it any worse. It's already bad. And it's tough when you're going through chemo and, it's killing your body and the cancer. So there was a lot of times I had low energy, and a lot of times I had to say no to things. But there were also a lot of things I was able to say yes to and still have experiences when I had the energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm very thankful for, the times that I did have when I was sick.
Thank you for joining us for this special look back at some of the amazing cancer survivors we have spoken with on Believe in Progress. Hearing these survivor stories reminds us of the incredible progress we've made and the journey that lies ahead. Your support is crucial in continuing this vital work. If you were inspired by today's stories and want to make a difference, please consider making a donation to the American Association for Cancer Research at AACR.org. Your contributions directly support groundbreaking research and improve the lives of cancer survivors. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. Share this podcast with friends and family to spread awareness and celebrate the resilience of cancer survivors. Together, we can drive progress and bring hope to countless lives. Thank you for listening, and until next time, remember, cancer research saves lives.